In some ways, uncertainty can be even more challenging than straight on stress. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're going to talk about stress and its impact on the mind, body, and emotions. And then we're going to talk about some practical strategies for managing uncertainty in order to thrive. And we're going to go through Dr. Christine Carter's 7 strategies for surviving uncertainty that I think are just amazingly awesome and wonderful. So I hope they bring some value to your life as well. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love Winnie the Pooh. I think if we read the works of A.A. Milne and really look at what he says, he's got all kinds of mental health challenges wound up in his writings. But in this excerpt, he says, "Promise me, you'll always remember you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think." I don't know about you guys, but right now, with everything going on around us and in our world, when we look at COVID and all of the things that come along with COVID, when we look at the racial unrest that's been existing in our country, or the political unrest, and all of the things that are going on, it's been a challenging time to live in our country and in our world. Just if we look at what's going on in our world, just related to COVID, what we see, and we could have talked a long time about this, but I cut some of this out because we all know it's tough. We know that pre-COVID, we looked at about 1 in 10 adults telling us that they were struggling with anxiety and depression. Since COVID, we know that that number has grown to 1 in 4. 36%, so about slightly more than a third of us, are saying that we're having trouble sleeping at night. And 12%, unfortunately, are using what we would call in the field maladaptive coping skills and have greatly increased their substance use. So we know that the uncertainty this is just statistics linked to COVID. We know if we also factored in the racial issues or the political issues. One stat that I looked at that I was going to include said that since COVID hit and some recent things, that we know that 55% of adults that they surveyed in one of the APA surveys said that they're worried each month about making their bills. So this is a tough time in our world. The reality, however, is that we're always living with some uncertainty. It's part of living in this world, and what we really need to focus on, and what we need to focus on even when we're not in times of uncertainty, but certainly now when we're going through what we're going through, is how do we manage that uncertainty and how we manage our health, both physical and emotional health during times of uncertainty. We know that uncertainty, really, when we talk about it, equates to stress. And stress, and we're going to talk about stress, and specifically stress's impact on our mind, body, and emotions. But we know that uncertainty has placed us in a position where we're dealing with stress at a higher level and in a different way than we typically would be dealing with stress. What the research shows, and when I looked into it and I started to do the specific research so I could really talk this through with you, what the research shows is that uncertainty leads to stress in a much different way than normal stress does. And the reason is because we really don't know what's going to happen. We talk about our operations director at Northern Pines, with some of the things that we've gone through in the last few years, says that we are, quote, building the plane as it's up in the air flying. Uncertainty robs us of our ability to predict the future because we don't know based on, normally I can say, okay, I know that these cookies are going to take a little bit longer because I've made them before. I can take my past experience, I can take what I know, I can say to one of the people I supervise, this person is likely, based on diagnosis and what you've told me, is likely to have this manifestation of that illness. I can't do that anymore. As a result, because I can't rely then on the things I know or my past experience, what ends up happening is I am less able then to manage negative events when they do happen. And even if I'm in a situation where maybe I can prevent it by doing something, I'm less likely to know what actions to take during those moments. The other thing that happens when we're facing uncertainty is that it grows poor decision making. We don't know how to prepare. And part of that, and believe me, I love cognitive psychology. So if Karen would have given me the time, poor Karen, if Karen would have given me the time, we could have talked about cognitive psychology and how that's impacting. But it really changes the way that we problem solve during those times. Here's the deal. When we're faced with a clear threat, when I know exactly what I'm facing, so if I've got a problem, I don't know, a car is coming toward me, I know I'm going to get fearful, and I have a very clear response. I know what my response should be. But when I'm faced with a threat, which I really can't define, right? I don't know if I go to the grocery store, am I going to be one of the people that touches something that someone with COVID touched, and that's going to be enough for me to pick it up? Because I don't know that, I have to constantly be in hyper alert. I have to spend a lot of time constantly and consistently assessing the risks that are around me. When we look at what that means, then, we talk about anxiety as being a type of fear. Fear is created in response to things that are specific and that we can define. And what ends up happening is that car is coming towards me on the highway. I know what I can do to avoid that, hopefully to avoid that, but I have a short-lived stressful response. In cases where I'm dealing with uncertainty, as I am currently in society, we end up having a very unpredictable threat that is not well defined, and that creates inside each and every one of us a higher sustained stressful response. And the reason why is because we don't know, as that threat is uncertain, as it's ill-defined, we don't know then, how far should I go to address the challenge? You realize that in that moment then, as I'm looking at those, as that threat and trying to decide what am I gonna do, what are Holley's steps gonna be to protect myself from that threat, I run the risk of two errors. The first error is that, okay, I can do what I know to be the minimum level, it's gonna be efficient. But then what happens if, oh, let me tell you a story. I'm sorry, I promised I wouldn't tell many stories during this one because it was short time, but I gotta tell you a story. My husband and I, in November for my birthday, decided that we would go to the cities. Now, I want you to know I've been very, very housebound. It's not a problem. I really like my house. We spent a ton of time outside in the summer. It really wasn't that bad. But we decided we really would like to go to the cities and just have a day, right? And we weren't going to stay overnight. We weren't going to go wild and crazy. This is last November. But we wanted to go, and we wanted to go to one specific shopping mall, which is not as populated as the Mall of America, which I also that's a whole nother. But we were going to go to this mall. I'm asked everything, and I'm walking down the hall. Nice to be. And there are people standing on their 6-foot interval hallway. All of a sudden, this man who was in line with his back towards me turned around, faced me, pulled his mask down, and as I walked past him, he coughed. I just about came unglued. It was like, oh my gosh, this was stupid. Why in the heck would I stay home all this time, now go down into another germ pool, and then let this guy cough on me, right? In that moment, my efficient level of all planning got faced with a threat or problem that needed a more intense response, which was not to face that man at all. The other risk that I run, though, is if I over-prepare and I stay home and I completely isolate and go all the way to that extreme, what ends up happening if in reality, social distancing and some of these things just at the level that the CDC and everybody is telling us is adequate to meet the needs. So bottom line, the end result is stress. And stress long-term is a challenge and is a huge, huge problem for us ongoing. Now, in the interest of time, we're going to whip through things rather quickly, but we're going to look at it really the stress and its impact on your body. We know that stress has huge impact on your cardiovascular system. We see their heart rate going up, your blood pressure going up, glucose level going up, all of those things causing long-term problems if that stress doesn't abate. For our digestive system, we see problems with digestion, we see problems with metabolism, we see problems with decreased immune system functioning. So bottom line, physically, stress is bad for us. When we look at its impact on your brain, this is fun, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be good here too and try to stay in my lane. But bottom line, there's two types of matter in our brain. Gray matter, which is what we talk about is responsible for higher order thinking, and white matter, okay? And that's really the parts of the brain that are responsible for connectivity. So connectivity and communication between different lobes of the brain and different parts of the brain. What ends up happening is we see an imbalance created because of increased myelination. When we're under stress and we're getting flooded with cortisol, our brain creates more myelin, which is great because that's the fatty case that encases the axons that create the communication between neurons. So that's great. But when it's being created at higher levels, it disrupts that communication. So there's a balance that ends up happening that we can't think, we can't function, we can't problem solve. And remember, I already said that we're going to have challenges in problem solving. The other thing that happens is that chronic stress or chronic flooding of cortisol kills neurons in the hippocampus. And this is the part of the brain that's responsible for memory, emotion, and learning. It's also one of only 2 spots in the brain where neurogenesis occurs. And what neurogenesis is it's the rebuilding of neurons once they've been broken down. So ultimately what ends up happening then is it shrinks our brain. So stress also in terms of neural functioning is bad. And then I'm sorry, you guys, I did not find one positive impact of stress and its impact on our emotions. Instead, I saw the things that are outlined on this slide, which include irritability, frustration, hostility, all things, again, that make our life more negative and again, make problem solving more difficult. So what do we do? Well, anybody who knows me knows that my go-to place where I'm going to go and look is the Greater Good at berkeley.edu site. And thank heavens, there's a wonderful lady named Christine Carter who came up with 7 strategies to survive living in uncertainty. The first thing is we need to practice acceptance. We need to, just as we do when we meditate, we need to just surrender. And so at first, we need to mourn and to grieve, as Dr. Bowman will tell us through next Monday. Can't wait for that one. But we need to just feel the feelings, and then we need to surrender our resistance, and we need to say, yes, this is hard. I'm going to tell you honestly, at Thanksgiving, I had a challenge. We did Zoom, we did everything we could, but it wasn't the same as being around family on that day. It's okay for me to feel that it's different. I'm not asking, nor is Dr. Carter asking you to put on Pollyanna and say, okay, this is just the way it is, I got to survive it. I'm also not asking you just to lay back and passively resign to the situation, but we do have to, in order to be healthy, learn to accept what is. Number 2, Dr. Carter says that we need to invest in ourselves. I'm going to take us back to the beginning of my presentation. We talked about the increase in maladaptive coping with people using substances. We need to make sure that we're not engaging in those type of coping strategies, but instead are investing in our body, our mind, and our spirit. This summer, I have some heart issues. My husband, by the way, is an avid biker, and he bikes when he bikes. It's not odd for him to bike 40 to 50 miles. It's just, that's a day's ride for him. He loves it, and he knows all the trails, and it's fun. But I can't keep up with him. This summer he made I don't know, it was risky. It was life-threatening for him that I get an electric assist bike. And then he told me what they cost. I just about threw something at him. For heaven's sakes, it's just stupid. And I do not need an electric assist bike. If I can't go under my own power, I'm not going to go. Well, then I went to the store. I tried it out. Turns out you really have to pedal. It doesn't go if you just stop pedaling. So I can't stop pedaling. We had the best summer. And Holley now can say that she's done 40 to 50 mile bike rides because I invested the money in myself. We need to get over the Northern Minnesota Scandinavian idea that self-care is selfish. That's not the case. We know that we can't do anything for anybody else if we're not taking care of ourselves. So number 2, invest in yourself. Number 3, we need to find healthy ways to comfort yourself. And again, looking at the tendency for some folks to go towards maladaptive coping strategies, we need to make sure that we're doing things on a daily basis that comfort us and change our lens. I talk with the kids that I work with that when I'm explaining and doing psychoeducation for depression and anxiety, I talk to them about how depression is like seeing the world through a pair of sunglasses that are tinted with depressive lens. We need to, during this time of uncertainty, put on lenses that help us see the world. Okay, it's not perfect, but it is. Look around. Right now, I'm not thrilled about the weather, but guys, I don't know about you, when I read the number of people this morning that are without heat, I'm very, very grateful to be where I'm at and to have heat in my life. We need to exercise, we need to create, and we need to connect. Number 4, don't believe everything you think. I know that there's a lot of times where I think when I wake up and I'm kind of sad, I don't get to see people face to face, or I don't get to, I'd like to see a movie in a movie theater again. I really would like to do that. It'll come, I know. But sometimes I get kind of cranky because I can't do it right now. And then I think this is going to go on forever. Cognitive behavioral therapy, the 2 things we need to do when those moments happen. Number 1, look at your thought. Is that thought accurate? And even if it is accurate, yeah, this time is hard. Is that helpful? In those moments, again, give yourself a moment where you can experience the thought that you're having, and then when you can move on. And then spend some time, instead of imagining the worst, imagine the best. I have to tell you, this year for my birthday, my kids gave me a portal. I didn't want it. It's a Facebook thing, it goes on the TV, but it's the coolest thing in the world. It's not my favorite gift I've ever received from my kids, because at night I can read my kids a bedtime story, and it puts me in the story I read to them. Kind of hurts that their favorite image of me is a Dr. Seuss image with a thing on my nose and things like that, but heck, if it makes my grandkids laugh, it makes me happy. I wouldn't have ever had that moment. I don't think the kids would have thought of that if it hadn't been for COVID. So again, instead of imagining the worst, imagine the best. Number 5, pay attention. Understand the opposite of uncertainty is not certainty, it's presence. It's being in here. So instead of this far off intangible thing, tune into where we're at in the moment. Notice what you're feeling. Notice where you're feeling. And then give yourself a moment to center. I know I push this every training I do, and I'm sorry if some of you have heard me before, but it is absolutely essential that every day we spend some time centering. Whether you do that through deep breathing, whether you do that through yoga, whether you do that through meditation, whether you do that through prayer, we need to take the time every day to center ourselves. It makes us understand that even if everything's out of control, we can control ourselves. Number 6, we need to stop looking for someone to rescue us. Understand that psychologically what that does is I think somebody's going to solve my problems for me. It gives me, number 1, no responsibility. And number 2, I can just lay here and feel powerless and feel out of control. What we need to do is instead say, okay, I can't change the pandemic. I can't change what's going on with some of the protests. I can't change what's going on in our political system. But you know what? I can create my own solution here. I can reach out and call a friend. I can reconnect with people that make me happy and maybe try to make somebody else happy in the bargain. So again, stop looking for someone to rescue you and look for what you can control. And number 7, find meaning in the chaos. And I just had to give you the definition. Meaning is defined as the intellectual and emotional assessment of the degree to which we feel our lives have purpose, value, and impact. So again, even in the midst of this uncertainty, even in the midst of all the chaos, we are going to feel best if we stop thinking about ourselves and how hard this is for us and start focusing on helping others. What can we do in this moment to create positivity or improvement during these tough times? And then don't just wait for it to be over. I know for the short term, I really am not going to be very accessible face-to-face to people. But I also know I'm getting much, much better at Zoom. I'm getting much, much better at Facebook Messenger. I can do a lot of things right now to connect and to make the world better for those around me. So bottom line, we need to accept what is. We need to grieve if necessary, and I think it is. And then we need to live the life we want that we can in the now. Stop waiting for that perfect moment and start accepting the now. And I'm sorry for some of you, you've recently seen this slide, but I have this quote all over around me. It's one of my favorite. Basically what it says is the quality of our life depends on the quality of our mind. We can't control what happens on the outside, but we do have a say over the quality of our mind. No matter what's going on, if your mind is okay, everything is okay right now. And again, we need to close with Winnie the Pooh, who says that rivers know this: there's no hurry. We shall get there someday. If we can just center in, accept, and then try from where we're at right now to make the world a better place, it will be. So that's what I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, Holley. You can unmute yourself if you have a question. You can put it in the chat box. Great information. Absolutely great information.
Thank you.
Can you put the slide about the definition of meaning back up, please?
Yes. Yes, I can. Just a minute. There we go. It shows the wrong screen.
Thank you.
And I can send the PowerPoint if anybody wants it. I can send the PowerPoint to Karen and she can send it out. All right, I'll send it to Karen.
That'd be great.
I have to give a plug though. Greater Good at berkeley.edu, Science of Happiness. They actually, it was interesting this time, they actually did the research, the brain stuff that I shared today was new research that just came out of them. So.
Holley, you were the first person that shared that website with me, and it has great information. I think one of the first things we did was a mindfulness meditation that it's 12 to 15 minutes. It's really, and I think you really hit the nail on the head. Is I think sometimes we forget to put ourselves first, and that it's important. Self-care is really important, and I do think you are spot on with our environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we keep thinking it's going to be perfect, or no, we're going to take this trip and it's going to make this perfect. And don't get me wrong, I've had some great experiences on trips, but you know, I have a pretty nice home and our area of the state's pretty beautiful.
Mm-hmm. We're hearing a lot of thank yous to you in the chat feature. Wonderful presentation, informative. Coming from a current college student, this is very helpful information. Really great presentation. Thank you. Greater Good is an awesome site. Any other questions? And Holley, you did fantastic on time. Someday we'll make this a 4-hour. There's a lot of content.
There is.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We will send out the follow-up. We'll send out the slides.
Thank you very much. It was very good.
Thank you.
Thank you much. Thank you.
Any questions at all? All right, well, take it.
I'd just like to say it sounds like uncertainty is an opportunity. Thank you, Holley.
That's a great way of putting it, Lowell. Thank you. Lowell, can I steal it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Words of wisdom. Thank you again, Holley. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you all again in 1 month or sooner, Monday for Shattered Dreams.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.